Welcome to Sports Insider. I am Dan Labbe alongside Chris Fedor. We have a packed show as usual for you today. We're going to lead things off talking Browns-Ravens with Mary Kay Cabot. Then we're going to talk Indians playoff race, or at least what's left of it, with Paul Hoynes, our Indians beat writer. And then we're going to meet a new face here at cleveland.com, Joe Vardon, our LeBron James reporter. He started here this week. We're going to have him on the show to wrap things up, to talk LeBron, Cavaliers, all sorts of things with him. Chris, are you ready for Browns-Ravens?
I am ready. It's my birthday Sunday, so they've got a chance to bring home a W on my birthday, Dan.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in our Browns beat reporter now, Mary Kay Cabot, to talk about it. Mary Kay, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Browns-Ravens divisional game at home. Chris Fedor's birthday. Just starting off, I mean, following that win against the Saints, what do you think that atmosphere is going to be like and just around that stadium going up to that game?
Oh, I think it'll be electric, just like it was last week, and I think this will even add to it that they were able to come back and win like that. And, you guys have been there. It's, with the refurbished stadium, just has a different vibe, a different feel to it with those big video boards and, big plays are just larger than life now. So it's a really great atmosphere down there.
Mary Kay, when it comes to this past weekend's game against New Orleans, New Orleans came into the game, they were 0-1. They wanted to avoid going 0-2, but the Browns got it done. A game-winning drive engineered by Brian Hoyer that set up a game-winning field goal. When you think back to recent memory with the Browns and some of the wins that they've had, where would you say this one ranks?
You know what? It's definitely it's definitely up there. There haven't been that many over the years. But I would say that it probably goes up to, just because of the excitement factor and the way that it happened. It probably belongs up there in the top, top 8 or so.
Mary Kay, you look at the division right now. Obviously, the Bengals are on top at 2-0. They have a good chance to move to 3-0 this week. And then you got a whole bunch of 1-1s, including the Browns and the Ravens. Every game matters in the NFL, obviously, only 16 games. But as far as early season games go, this is a pretty big one.
It really is. I mean, they could go into the bye week 2-1, and things just start to look a little different when you're already at 2-1 because, then, hey, you win 7 more games somewhere down the stretch, and you're looking at the possibility of playoffs and things like that. So the excitement would really start to build up. Obviously, an AFC North rival to knock off the Ravens would be huge, and to get that done at home. And to establish that home field advantage would be very, very big. So, yes, this is a big game for them. They have a lot of momentum coming off of that Saints victory, and it's big it's big obviously for the Ravens too. They just knocked off the Steelers, and they want to keep that AFC North dominance going right now.
Mike Pettin has talked about it, and some of the players have talked about it too, Mary Kay. Now the next challenge for this team is trying to handle prosperity. They showed that they could bounce back from adversity, lose the game against Pittsburgh week 1, come back, win against New Orleans. How do you think this team is equipped to handle prosperity?
Well, you know what? I think Brian Hoyer will have a good way of keeping them level-headed. He knows how to help guys get focused on the task at hand, and then you've got some other really great team leaders that are able to do the same, and like a Carlos Dansby and a Dante Whitner. Dante Whitner's been to the Super Bowl. Some of the other players on the team have also been. So the Krugers and the Whitners and those kind of guys, they know how to get these young guys, get their heads on straight. The other thing that they've had to consider this week, there's a lot going on in the NFL that could provide distractions. I mean, everyone's talking about Adrian Peterson, Ray Rice, the new drug policy. Is Josh Gordon coming back? So Mike Pettin and his crew have had the added challenge of trying to make sure that these guys are, just in their playbook and practicing and not getting all caught up in what all this other stuff means.
Mary Kay, you start digging into the matchups for this game, and a lot of people have talked about the Browns receivers. They aren't real big necessarily, but maybe in this game that could be an advantage for them. Hawkins, Gabriel, guys like that, getting them in space. It's where the Ravens have been vulnerable. Do you think those guys can shine this week?
You know what? I do, and I think that Brian is elevating the play of players around him. They look at themselves as when we talked to Brian about this earlier in the week, he said, we've all been overlooked. So when you do look at the Andrew Hawkins and the Taylor Gabriels and even the Miles Austin, these guys are guys that, for whatever reason, landed here because perhaps somebody else really didn't want them. And it's working to their advantage. They're all overachieving. They're working really hard. And Brian has them believing in themselves. And, you're seeing that out there. And, I think now he's starting to learn how to throw to some of these smaller receivers. In the beginning, we were seeing him, throw a little bit too high for the 5'7" diminutive guys, the Andrew Hawkins and the Gabriels. But he's starting to figure it out, and you can see that he's also developing good chemistry with Miles Austin. In the beginning, I believe that Miles was still really having a hard time adjusting to a different quarterback other than Tony Romo. But now I think those guys are coming around, and they're looking a lot better.
Mary Kay, defense is a bit of an issue for the Browns so far in the first two games. Gave up 24 to New Orleans, gave up 30 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. On the other side of things for Baltimore, they've got a pair of Smiths. They've got Torrey and they've got Steve Smith Sr. Which one of those do you think the Browns are going to be more focused on this week?
Well, you have to be careful because, you don't really want to, forget about one or the other because either one of them can burn you with really big plays. And, we have seen that before. So it's going to be a challenge for Joe Hayden, Buster Screen, and Justin Gilbert. Now, Justin rebounded last week and had a much better game, and he will need it because Joe Flacco, who, by the way, missed practice just yesterday with an illness, not sure, how bad that is, but, Joe never misses a game, so I'm sure he's going to play, and I'm sure he'll feel fine. But he can get the ball to these guys anywhere on the field at any time. Even when it seems like, the play is botched, he can still, whatever Dante Whitner said yesterday, throw off his back foot for 65 yards, and it gets there. So, they've got the deep threat, obviously, in Torrey Smith. They've got the savvy vet in Steve, and it's going to be a tall order. Joe Flacco is 11-1 against the Browns. Wrap your head around that again. Ben Roethlisberger and Joe Flacco have just owned this football team.
Mary Kay, how are the Browns going to deal with these Baltimore tight ends? Obviously Steve Smith doing what he does. Torrey Smith has been a little quiet this season, but he's always due for a breakout. But one consistent thing for the Ravens has been those two tight ends, and Joe Flacco loves his tight ends. How are the Browns going to defend those guys?
Well, you know what? They obviously really, really struggled with Jimmy Graham last week, and that is what we would have been talking about had they lost that game. It would have been the 10 catches for 118 yards, the single coverage mostly of Joe Hayden on Jimmy Graham, and how that was largely ineffective. So they're really going to have to do a better job on Dennis Pitta and two-time Pro Bowl tight end Owen Daniels. And, again, those guys can really hurt them. So they're going to have to be on point, over the middle. The linebackers are going to have to pitch in. The safeties, Kayshawn Gibson, Dante Whitner, Carlos Danzy. Those are the guys that are really going to have to probably come up big against the tight ends.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter, joining us here on cleveland.com. Mary Kay, we appreciate you taking the time out to join us.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so Chris, you look at that matchup, Browns-Ravens. This is a really interesting game. I think this is, we kind of knew what the Browns had to do against the Saints, whether they could have done it, and they ended up doing it. With the Ravens, this is a really tough matchup for them.
It is, because you wonder, are the Browns going to be able to run the ball as effectively as they have the first two games? This is the best defense that the Browns have faced so far this season. And if they can't get that running game going the way that it's been going against the Saints and the Steelers, can they still have the same success throwing the ball? Because everything that the Browns do offensively, Dan, it's based on running the ball first. That's when they really started to pick things up in the second half against the Steelers in Week 1. That's how they were able to keep Drew Brees and that explosive New Orleans Saints offense off the field in Week 2. It's all about that running game, and Baltimore's got a top 10 run defense. So Terrence West, Isaiah Crowell, things have been somewhat easy in the first 2 weeks for them against the Steelers and the Saints. It's not going to be that way this weekend.
All right, let's shift gears. We're going to talk a little Indians baseball and bring in cleveland.com's Indians beat writer, Paul Hoynes. Hoynesy, how are you today?
What's up, guys?
Joining us from beautiful Houston, Texas, where the Indians have kind of turned things around down there after losing that first game. They've won two in a row, and it's been because of the pitching. 14 strikeouts for Kluber the other night, 12 for Carrasco last night. And let's just go to Carlos Carrasco. At the beginning of the year, there is no way anyone thought that he could put together a performance like that last night.
I mean, it really is. The transformation has been just amazing. When he went to the bullpen after those 4, poor starts in April, I thought, this is it. We're never going to see this guy again. The Indians will quietly designate him for assignment, and that will be, the book will finally have been closed on Carrasco and his pretty much failure to take advantage of a great arm. And but he went to the bullpen. He changed his mental outlook. He had success in the bullpen, and he's come back as a starter. And right now, you've got to figure. I mean, he's an integral part of that rotation. Going into the 2015 season. I mean, last night it took the best hitter in baseball to deny him a no-hitter.
Hoynes, you mentioned it, one of the issues with Carrasco his entire career, and this goes back to his time in the minors with the Philadelphia Phillies, is upstairs. It's what's between his ears. It's the mental side of the game. So now that he's had a lot of success here, and he's been great down the stretch for the Indians, how is he going to handle that success? Is that something that Terry Francona and GM Chris Antonetti have talked to him about?
I don't think it's an issue right now. I mean, he's had 8 starts. 8 starts does not a season or a career make. I think they're just very, very encouraged. And, he seems like a different guy. Like you said, there was questions about what was going on between his ears, but also what was going on in his heart. There was definite makeup questions about Carrasco. I mean, if you guys watched him time and time again, when the going got tough, he'd give up a 3-run homer to Miguel Cabrera, and that would be it. So you start wondering about a guy then. Can he pitch in tough situations? Can he get critical outs? And, since he went to the bullpen, I think he got away from that grind of that 4-day grind of being a starter, of, pitching once and getting away from, the 4 days of training and worrying about your next opponent, about, just kind of isolating yourself. And when he went to the bullpen, he was welcomed into the pen. I think he saw like there was also a way to succeed and with a little more fun than being, just having that pressure of every start, being like your last start in the big leagues. So I think that's turned him around, and whether he, depending how he handles that, now, that's a great question. Is this the guy we're going to see in spring training next year? You really can't say that. There's no way to really foresee that. But he certainly has. He's finishing the season strong. He's put himself in a great position to come into camp next year and perhaps, who knows, be the number 2 starter behind Kluber.
Hoynes, it's funny, you kind of look back, the Indians have taken a lot of heat, and rightfully so, for those 2 Cy Young trades. And this year it took a long time, but if Carrasco can become the pitcher that he's shown at the end of this year, you've got an all-star outfielder in Michael Brantley. At the very least, do those trades look at least a little bit better than they did, 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on trade. I think they held on to Carrasco not to make the trade look good, but they saw the arm. And they had no other choice. This guy, if you watch him throw a bullpen session, he said, this guy's Cy Young. This guy, there's no reason why this guy shouldn't be winning, 12 to 15 to 16 games a year. But it's what happened when he got in the mound that worried you. He seems to have conquered that. Maybe it does take longer for some players than others. You can't, players don't develop on your timeline, on the general manager's timeline, on a fan's timeline. They develop on their own timeline. And perhaps that's what we're seeing with Carrasco. With Brantley, I think he's been more of a steady progression. I remember when they made the Sabathia trade with Milwaukee, and they got the 4 players, and Laporta was supposed to be the key player, but the Indians were saying even then, the player we get to be named at the end of this season could be the best player in the trade, and that was Brantley, and they turned out to be right. I mean, he had a much better. I think you could see him coming. With Carrasco, this guy's come out of the mist like the headless horseman. This guy has come out of nowhere.
Wednesday, the other pitcher who's kind of come out of nowhere is Corey Kluber. He's in the race for the AL Cy Young. Felix Hernandez, he's going to get some looks. Chris Sale from Chicago might get some looks. Who do you consider Corey Kluber's biggest competition for that award?
I'd have to consider Hernandez probably, but Sale and Hernandez. Mm-hmm. Sale has the great ERA, but he's pitching for a losing team, a team that's that isn't going anywhere but home at the end of the season. I think if Seattle is able to get into the postseason or at least win a wild card, get into the wild card, that's going to help Hernandez. The Indians going down the stretch here, aren't out of it, but they're teetering, and it would take a miracle, a major miracle for them to get into the postseason now. But this is a very close race. It's a very interesting race, and Kluber has to be considered a strong candidate.
Can Kluber win it if Seattle makes the postseason?
The Cy Young voting has gotten so skewed to me over the years, and you probably don't want to hear my rant on this.
No, we do. Go.
But Hernandez won the Cy Young like 3 or 4 years ago, and he had like 11 wins or 12 wins.
Right.
So it's not about wins and losses. It's about it's about FIP. And it's about WAR. It's about what kind of defense you have behind them. It's no longer about just the basic wins, losses, ERA, game started, inning pitched. That has nothing to do with it. So basically in the Cy Young voting, anything could happen, and I think that gives Kluber a chance because his the kind of the sabermetric stats his are very, very good,
right.
And he's got a ton of strikeouts. Mm-hmm. He's got a ton of quality starts. His strikeout to walk ratio is great. I mean, this guy he has a legitimate chance, and it doesn't matter he's got 2 more starts. So I don't think it matters if he wins both of them. I don't think wins and losses they have lost so much cachet in determining a Cy Young winner now, that he could lose both games now, and I think he would still be a strong candidate.
All right, Paul Hoynes, our Cleveland Indians beat writer, joining us here on Sports Insider. Hoynes, appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so that is Paul Hoynes, and Chris, you look at this Indians, they've made a noble run, I suppose, and it looks to me, I'm looking at their schedule, they've got the Royals coming up, but it feels to me like the string is out on this team. They pretty much have to win out, and you're talking a ton of wins in a row, even more than last year when they won 10 in a row.
Right.
Very unlikely. I don't know. I don't know if I see it.
I'd say it's unlikely, too, just because of the teams that they're going to be facing here towards the end of the year, and one of those teams being the Kansas City Royals. Yeah. Like you mentioned, Kansas City's playing some really good baseball right now. One of the strengths that the Indians have this year is the starting pitching, and Kansas City's starting pitching has been really good, too, in its own right, and Kansas City's starting to hit the ball a little bit as well. So just based on the way that the schedule sets up, I think they needed to be a little bit closer, Dan, with this series against Kansas City.
Yeah, they have, I guess, kind of 4 games against Kansas City because they have that makeup where they have to play that inning.
It's a win, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there is still a chance. You're saying there's a chance, I guess, and then they finish up against the Rays with a series in Minnesota right after.
And by the way, the whole King Felix versus Kluber thing, I'm just looking at stats. I'm not a huge stat guy, Dan, or anything along those lines, but I'm looking at this, and King Felix has a better ERA. He's got a better whip, whatever that is. He's got a better WAR, whatever that is. So those things that Hoynes was talking about there, those stats that some people are starting to look to more and more and more, right now they favor Hernandez.
Wins above replacement.
Oh, is that what WAR is?
Wins above replacement. Got it. Whip is your walks and hits divided by your innings pitched.
Okay, look at you. I didn't know you were a stat geek.
I guess I am. All right, we're going to change gears here again, and we're going to bring in a new face here at cleveland.com. He is the man assigned to cover all things LeBron James. Joe Varden joins us. Joe, welcome aboard.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so yesterday you wrote a little bit about looking back to 2010 and all the things that the Cavs tried to do to keep LeBron here. They turned to the governor, Ted Strickland, at the time. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, much has been made about what the Cavs had done in 2010 to try to keep LeBron. I mean, there was the infamous meeting with team officials and the cartoon that they made. Where LeBron appreciated that, and his friends appreciated that. And there was obviously all sorts of an outpouring of support for him. But there were also many things done behind the scenes, and one of them was then Governor Ted Strickland had a chance to reach out to Maverick Carter to convey just how important he felt, or how important LeBron was to Ohio and Northeast Ohio. And the meet, if you will, was set up by one of Dan Gilbert's top business officials, the man who runs the casino operation.
All right, I'm going back to 2010. We have to go back to 2010.
You're going to talk about the cartoon, aren't you?
Yes, I am going to talk about the cartoon. So many of the brightest minds in the NBA came here to Cleveland to make a pitch to LeBron, the biggest free agent the NBA has ever seen, and the Cavs came up with their plan to go with fart jokes in a cartoon to woo the best player in the NBA. You wonder why it didn't go well, Dan and Joe.
Fart jokes in the State House. I'm not sure where
You got Pat Riley on one hand, throwing his rings on the table.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough time for certainly everyone here, and it's a time that the organization certainly wants to move past from it, and I think LeBron does too. I mean, he said it in his letter and some of the other things. I mean, it was a move that he wanted to make. He needed to go and experience life outside of Northeast Ohio. He's back now. I mean, we all believe firmly that he'll be here for the duration. And I think that's what he's looking forward to, and certainly that's what the organization is looking forward to.
And Joe, as rough as those 4 years were, and not only did LeBron kind of learn a lot from that, I think it helped the Cavaliers too. I think they learned a lot about how to build a basketball team. Bring back the best player in the world. But I think they learned a lot about themselves, the ownership, they got their front office in order. It seems like him being away for 4 years benefited pretty much everyone involved.
Well, it certainly showed the organization that the support in the community is there. Because you take arguably the most recognizable, I mean, the biggest star in sports, and you take them away from your franchise, and fans still showed up, they still tuned in. It's some of the darkest days of the franchise. And so I think that's a testament to just how good of a fan base they have here in Cleveland, and particularly with the Cavs. And I think there's going to be a level of appreciation for those fans going forward because they stuck through it, and through thick and thin.
All right, LeBron James reporter. Sum that up for us. What does that mean? What's your day-to-day job here, Joe?
I think that our boss here, Chris Quinn, summed it up best when he talks about the arc of LeBron. LeBron, first and foremost, he is a basketball player, and not just a basketball player. He's really good, as in like the best. And all this other stuff wouldn't be there if not for his basketball skills. So we'll be there. I'll be there most nights, certainly all home and lots of times on the road, covering him as a basketball player. But there's a different side of LeBron, or a separate side that looks at into his growing business empire. He's dabbled into acting, both on screen and with commercials, that sort of thing. He's a philanthropist, with charities. We're going to take a look at that. He wants to better his community, both in Akron and Cleveland. Those are all parts of the arc of LeBron, and it's my job to follow all of that.
Yeah, and again, another interesting kind of juxtaposition. When he got drafted, it was all about, I'm going to light up Cleveland like Vegas. And now, we were all at the premiere of the show that his production company is producing, and he talked about, I want to create jobs. He talked about the community impact. Again, sort of the maturation from a guy coming out of high school into the NBA to a guy who's now going to be 30 years old, has a family, changing his vision a little bit.
Well, Dan, I mean, we all talk about the decision as from 10 about as an example of his immaturity. But if you actually look at, to use the word again, the arc of his career, that was about it. I mean, he for the amount of money that was thrown at him and the fame that was thrown at him at such a young age, he has always, I think, handled it fairly well. But he's also grown, and I think that's the point that you're trying to make. For a 29-year-old with lots of basketball to go, to come out and say that he's thinking about creating jobs is, it's obviously a positive thing, and like you said, it shows where he's come from.
I mean, I think that's always been the most amazing thing about LeBron, to me in particular, is that he was put in the spotlight at such a young age, and so much was expected of him at such a young age. And the two things that people will point to, the fact that maybe he's not the greatest tipper, people joke about that all the time,
right.
You know what I mean? And a bad decision that he made on national TV where he put on a shirt that looked like it was from an Italian restaurant, it was a tablecloth, and he decided to go to another city, he went to Miami, and everybody knows that the way he went about it, people felt betrayed, they felt stabbed in the back, he probably should have called the Cavs to let them know in advance, but we're in this world now where we've got so many other things happening in the NFL, in the NBA, that are just horrendous, terrible to even fathom, and people got on LeBron about those, what seem like minor things.
Right, sure. And I think, on the one hand, LeBron and his fans would say he doesn't owe anyone anything. He was a free agent. He had the right to do exactly what he did, and he did have that right. But I think LeBron has recognized, and I think you can see it in his writings, in his words, in his tweets, things he says, that he feels it. Not necessarily maybe that he owes, but that he wants to make it right.
Right.
And I can't wait to see what that looks like on the floor. When he plays with he's sort of on a mission to make it right with the people that cheered him for so long. I mean, from a child age all the way up to the time he left.
Joe, you are going to be a busy man.
Indeed.
Not just from now until June, but pretty much year-round, covering LeBron and all things LeBron James. We're, of course, happy to have you aboard.
Joe, I was looking forward to LeBron getting a coaster named after him at Cedar Point. What the heck happened there?
I've got to, I suppose, tap into my roller coaster sources to figure that one out, but it's still a good deal. The kids from his foundation get to go there for a day.
What roller coaster would you have named after you?
Oh,
If you could pick
man.
one.
You kidding me? Millennium. It's the best one in the park.
Yeah.
I'd go with the Magnum. I've always been a Magnum fan.
Really? You're going that old school?
Yeah, come on. You
on.
got the tunnels. It feels like it's gonna knock your head
Man, remember back in the day, if you tried to get on the Magnum, it was about, what,
Oh, yeah.
2 hours, two and a half hours?
That was your day.
Yeah.
Right there, just standing in the line.
Now you can go straight there. You can ride that about 5 times before you can get on Maverick or something along those lines.
See?
So Maverick Carter has a roller coaster
He does.
named after him in the
Isn't that
park.
amazing? I know, it's crazy.
Work on that.
All right, that'll do it for another edition of Sports Insider. Our thanks to Mary Kay Cabot, Paul Hoynes for joining us, and of course Joe Varden making his first of what will probably be many appearances on our show. For Chris Fedor, I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.